Tandem Nomads, episode 126.
And so that was also heartbreaking. So that, I think, is the time in which I realized that I needed to make my own thing.
And it doesn't have to be one conversation. It can be a set of conversation.
How do you find stability in that?
Hello, Nomad Nation. Welcome to Tandem Nomads, the podcast show and entrepreneurship platform where you can find great inspiration and tips to grow a successful, portable business and thrive in your global nomadic life. This is your host, Emel Deregi. I'm a business and marketing coach and the founder of Tandem Nomads. This episode is aired in the holiday season of expats, the summer season in the Northern Hemisphere. So as I know that all of you must be so busy right now, traveling around, visiting family and friends, as mentioned previously, these episodes during the summer are going to be very short and effective. So in this episode, I'm going to share with you the top 3 episodes that were the most downloaded since the beginning of 2019. And I need to precise the top 3 guest episodes, because if you've been following Tandem Nomads on a regular basis, you might know that I alternate. 1 week it's an episode with a guest, and 1 week you will hear me, just you and me, share with you some specific marketing tips to be able to grow a portable business. So I wanted to celebrate some of the great guests that came here, and I found it super interesting when I looked at the downloads and how many people were listening to these episodes, that the top 3 episodes were very similar topics that were all gravitating around the notion of identity and how to develop our identity and our confidence while living on the move. So I can't wait to share these episodes with you, and I'm gonna also invite you to go to tandemnomads.com/126, where you can find all the information of each of these episodes. But for now, I'm gonna share with you just very short snippets of each episode. So the first episode that was the most downloaded was with Michael Ginsberg. Michael Ginsberg is an American expat partner, and he managed to build an amazing company in sustainable energy while living on the move. And I was really touched by Michael Ginsberg's testimony of his journey, and he was so authentic and so generous in sharing with us how he's been struggling with his identity and knowing who he was while moving from a country to another, especially as he had tied his whole identity around his profession and his career the way he had imagined it before moving abroad. It's a fascinating journey, and I'm so impressed by where Michael is today in his journey compared to where he started. So Michael Ginsberg is the founder of a company called Mastering Green. He's an engineer and an expert consultant in sustainable energy, and he does that on the move. And he also recently, shortly after this episode, he had published a book called Harness It: Renewable Energy Technologies and Project Development Models, Transforming the Grid. So if you're interested all about sustainability and sustainable energy, this is the book for you. But here is what he shared about his journey in small snippet and a small taste of it. Let's dig in.
What I realized was that it was this kind of deconstruction of my identity. I grew up really, in the Northeast United States, thinking my career was the definition of who I am. And I had a complete identity shift. For me, it was a way to jump off the traditional career ladder and to reassemble who I am based around what I've always wanted to be. The first one I think we talked about, which is this identity loss and identity shift. Yeah. And coming out the other side of that enabled me to reimagine what was possible within my own life. So that was really the first and most fundamental thing that happened to me, personally. And then finally, at the end of the time in Canada, about 6 months left, I had a job offer to work for an emerging solar energy company. But I called them up and I said, "Look, I have 6 months left. Do you still want to take me on?" And they said no. And so that was also heartbreaking. So that, I think, is the time in which I realized that I needed to make my own thing and not try to find career satisfaction in a 9 to 5 employee position. The business idea really started, like you said, from really this frustration that came out of moving from every 2 to 3 years, which I think all of your listeners can relate to. Mm-hmm. And I realized quickly, especially within the State Department, U.S. government context, in order to maintain some sort of consistency, it was necessary to really do my own thing.
Fascinating insight. And like I said, he has really shared with us how he has been going through this journey and really struggling with some parts of this journey. And he tells us what had helped him move forward and start his company. So check it out. You can go to tandemnomads.com/126 to find all the information and the link of the full version of this episode. So now let's go to the second most downloaded episode with my dear friend, Katia Vlachos. So Katia is a coach. She helps women live to their full potential and achieve their dreams and their goals. She also wrote an amazing book that's called A Great Move, Surviving and Thriving in Your Expat Assignment. And Katia and I have been talking so many times back and forth about the importance of choice and women empowerment, how important it is to sometimes realize that we do have the choice, even if we think we don't. So we talked about this in this episode, and here's a short snippet of it.
So the difference for me in that move to Vienna was that I didn't choose a move, or I felt that I had no choice. There were aspects, there were areas where I had a choice. And having a different mindset, or more like being in a different state, like a more positive state or more empowered state, would have allowed me to look for those areas where I had choices and then, make it work for me. So what I advise people is when there's something, when there's a potential offer coming, or when there's an actual offer coming, sit down again and make sure you both understand and are aligned in your understanding of what it means for every area of your life. What are the implications for, your professional life, your career, both of you, if that's an issue, your social life, your support, very important, especially if you're planning to start a family or if you have a family already, your personal development, and also especially for the role dynamics between you. What's the move going to mean? And it doesn't have to be one conversation. It can be a set of conversations, right? It's when you decide to link your life to somebody else, it's important to know that you see things the same way. Be aware that you have a choice. That's key. Yeah, and thinking that way. Well, I think, putting the emphasis on how you negotiate the terms of your relationship or your marriage very early on is key. So that's one key, and the other key is the mindset of choice, the mindset of empowerment. So for me, those are the two keys to managing, dual careers on the move.
In the full version of this episode, we discussed, number one, the choice of going abroad or not with your partner and your family, how to assess it. We talked about the choice to give up or not your career, how to make that decision. And the third one, which is quite a tough topic to discuss, but wildly necessary, because I know that it's a big taboo, but it's a necessary discussion to have, is the choice or not to stay in your marriage if you're not happy in it. And we talked about that. Katia helps also expats deal with divorce, so she was the right person to talk about that, as she has also been herself going through divorce, and she shared that in this episode. So to find all the information, go to tandemnomads.com/126. And here's the third most downloaded episode with Jerry Jones. Jerry Jones is a great transition specialist. I love reading his blogs. Every time he writes something, it's just spot on. So he's a transition specialist and an interculturalist. And in this episode, we talked about who do we become during life, family, and career transition, and how do we develop our identity as a family, as an individual, while we move from a country to another and adapt to other cultures, and how do we find our values, and how do we figure this out while being in transition on a constant base, and how to build that stability.
Like maybe another layer added to that is your own personality. And so you can explore that before you go through a transition. You can understand yourself and get to know yourself better. But you really get to see yourself when you are in transition, and you get to see it's not always the best version. It's rarely the best version of yourself. There's something just truly magical about seeing your values, what those core values that were put into you wherever and however you grew up. But then every transition gives you an opportunity to see yourself through the lenses of a different place, and a different people and a different set of values. And it doesn't always destroy your values. It doesn't always change your values, but it tests them. There is no stability in our geography. It keeps changing. There's no stability in our there's some stability in our community, but that keeps changing as well. Every year we say goodbye to a lot of people. How do you find stability in that? Stability comes from the inside out. And so the routines that we do with our kids stay the same, whether we are in China or in America, or if we're traveling somewhere else. If we move to Mars, the routines stay the same. The traditions, they have to shift a little bit. They change, but we keep the core the same, and we find little pieces. So one of the things that we do is pizza and popcorn for family night, and we come back, and we'll if we go someplace where that's not as easy to find, we do the best that we can, and we come back. Right now, we haven't had popcorn for a while. It's just been pizza. But my kids will always know that when popcorn and pizza are together, there's something special about the bond for our family. And I want my kids 20 years to now to finish the sentence. When I was a kid, we always had pizza and popcorn for family night. And I want to think through, how do I want them to answer that question in different ways? When I was a kid, we always, or when I was a kid, we never. And that's where the stability comes from.
So here we go, Nomad Nation. If you want to hear all about Jerry Jones' great insights, I was just fascinated with how he shared his journey, but also his tips on how to deal with those gray zones of transition and culture and identity. So go to tandemnomads.com/126 and you will find the link to the full episode right there, and all the information about Jerry Jones. Nomad Nation, I hope that you enjoyed this episode with a short inspiration, short snippet, and I hope that you're having wonderful holidays and a great time with your family and your friends and visiting. I know it's not always the most relaxing holidays, but hopefully the most fulfilling and filling with love. So wishing you a beautiful summer if you're in the Northern Hemisphere, and thank you for tuning in, even if it's not maybe the best time for you. Thanks for listening, and stay tuned for the next episode. Stay tuned to turn your challenges into great opportunities.